Hi, Ulum.
Hey, how are you, Jason?
I'm doing great, thanks. Nice to see you again, and I'm ready to dive in with some of these workshops
I know it's around the corner.
around the corner.
I hope folks are very, very happy to hear from us because there's more to come.
I hope so too. I hope that this time in our living rooms and our houses here, talking about these workshops, is interesting to hang out with us for a minute and hear about what's on the menu. Because kind of what we're doing was we're going over the menu for the dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. And today we're particularly here to talk about the Indigenous Roots Forever track, which is I'm really, really excited about, and you are an integral part of. So I am ready for you to tell us more about the Indigenous Roots Forever track.
Yeah. I wanted to actually give a little bit of history of, how this happened, and how the collaboration is going so well, and it makes so much sense. So in the side of us and NOFA is like so exciting make to open the door to make equitable our conference, our trainings, our work inside the organization, and that had led to like really exciting stuff. And one is like how we support folks that haven't been supported before, and how we can broaden the educational spectrum that we have done so well through all the 50 years. It's so exciting. It's kind of like a good almond, I would say. Like 50 years, we grew up, and now we're doing this. So PPLT had been doing these conferences, very small, one-track conferences to talk about land trust and land rematriation, land reclamation, land use of like open space and creative ways to indigenous folks to have access to their traditional lands.
Tell us, please tell us what PPLT is.
It's the Pukase Pokenoke Land Trust. It's a land trust that was born by the necessity of hold land in a legal structure allowed by the US government structure to take care of open space. And so people with traditional lands could, hold them and use it in perpetuity, which is not a lot of ways to do that, except maybe through private ownership or owned by a nonprofit, which is what it is. But it's a more traditional way to own property, which is actually not what we believe. We don't believe we can own our mothers. So, but it is a structure that give you like a little bit more flexibility on, and we're gonna talk all about that during the track. Why a land trust, what is a land trust, and the vision of some of the indigenous leaders of PPLT or Casa Pokenoke Land Trust. So we're gonna have, Chief George Spring Buffalo, also known as Sequan Pijaki, and he is gonna dive into the history of his people, and with Chief Daryl Black Eagle, which is a singer, medicine drum singer and leader, and also like, an artist and a really fun person to be around if you like music and arts in general. And Rocky Johnson, Chief Rocky is actually known as also a charging bull. He's from the Narragansett tribe. He's the Ninigret Nahantic Narragansett tribe. And he is a food advocate. He's a food worker. He's doing amazing things, from food, from seed to like cooking, and really creating partnerships for Indigenous youth to learn traditional ways, from seed keeping to farming to making beds and garden beds and all other stuff. So it's going to be a really interesting 5 sessions workshop, and they are going to introduce basically like why we're doing it this way or what. And I will have to say that it has been like 10 years of pushing the agenda of like how we connect, people to the land and to the food, and how that has been disconnected for generations through genocide and forced labor and stolen of lands. So I think this is a very important time of, acknowledgement and recognition of the wrongs to some people, or to a lot of people. And I think it's a way to see through the eyes of others. So I really hope a lot of people feel invited to come. The other thing that I'm excited about this is the whole track is going to be translated and interpreter, so people will have documents in their language that they can read, and connections, and also we will have interpreters through the whole track. So that's new for NOFA, and I know NOFA is doing that in others, so I'm excited. And then we're gonna dive into the most, like, I think one of the deeper ends of the conference, which is like the cultural and ancestral connection to this work, and why we do this, and what are the spiritual connections with Mother Earth. And we're gonna dive into the spiritual pieces of food and the earth and all the things that make food happen, like water and sun, and traditional connections around that. And we're gonna have like 3 or 4 speakers that do this work day in and day out. And then we're gonna talk a little bit about how we work together, coming from so many different places and so different cultures and different languages, and how we're able to collaborate, where we find those like intricate points of connection, and how we weave ourselves to do the work we do, and how we need each other, which is like what we do, what the planet do for vegetables. We talk day in and day out of the interconnection between the trees and the vegetables and the soil. There's going to be a very interesting conversation around why we need everybody in this. We're in this together. We're not going to have food access if we not do it together, and how we're doing it with a group of nonprofits. I think where farmers probably have been in the conference before with the Flat Mentors program, 200 plus immigrant and refugees folks working together, growing their traditional foods, which is like one of the organizations that one day I inspired to grow up to be like in Global Village. Glove Village is going to be presenting on traditional food systems and how our work with work farmers and the Somali Bantu community group in Maine, how we working to empower farmers. A lot of them are farmers that have years of experience of growing, but then they move to the Northeast and it's a different animal. But they have like tons of things to teach too. So how we can combine those two and like learn from each other. And, you know, under the umbrella, the Pukasapukinoke Land Trust, and how we can like respect their traditions here and respect the land and know that we're in stolen lands and we have to figure out a way to heal from that hurt. So we're working really close together to do that. And it has been a long but really rewarding road. So that's the building capacity through organizing. And then at the end, not because it's the least, but it's because it's the most important. We started with history and then here we are and what the young people are doing and how they're taking charge. So that is to hear about the, you know, third generation or 10th generation folks, how they're doing, working together as Indigenous people and in either in their lands or in somebody else's land, trying to take accountability and respecting those intersections. So I'm really excited about that one specifically because I am not doing it at once. And the second is because it's a surprise also for me. So they have kept it in secret. So I don't know what is in the slides or, so I'm really intrigued and excited that they're taking such a care of show what they've been doing the last 3 years of work. So I'm excited about that. You have questions. I'm pretty sure I can see your face. You're like, I want to ask this question.
Oh no, I not necessarily having questions, but more inspiration. Just so happy to have you know, a reframing of our approach to some of these things, such as land trusts in general. So reframing in the sense of, you know, what I've been exposed to for land trusts and seen land trusts function in certain places and how they work and how they integrate with the communities and the access that is granted and the way that it's navigated is it's almost just like it's just one way that it's been perpetuated. And I love that PPLT is, you know, just, you know, cultivating an approach that ultimately is not creating exclusivity, because I think there's that risk that land trusts create exclusivity with fantastic resources and a lot of people are just kind of boxed out of that. And then in the acquisition of particular lands, the whole navigating of how that happens, there's a lot of people left out. And so I think the PPLT model and not even a model, it's just the way that PPLT operates is a much more integral way of doing things, honors everyone.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure Chief George have his own perspective on this, and he would talk about it. I'm positive, but yeah, it's refreshing to see a tool that have been used for exclusion and for you know, like we start always the conversation about land trust saying we are basically using the same tool that has been used to oppress or to exclude people to actually create inclusion. And and to create support. And I'm not saying that that PPLT is perfect, and I think he will also say that there is some shortcomings with laws, because the laws are made for that, to create the systematic nightmare that some of us live in. But also, like, it could be a tool that it could be used in a better way, a tool for inclusion. So yeah, he would talk about conservation and how we as Indigenous folks have seen conservation not in that narrow-minded of like, we have to conserve this thing and the rest of the stuff is out. It's more like in a holistic approach of like, if people talk about native plants and native animals or native, like, why cannot they think about indigenous people or native folks? So that is the conversation that he probably will enjoy to talk about with other folks. And I'm pretty sure it's a lot of time allocated at the end of those conversations for folks to ask questions, and um, and to have like more conversations to come. This is not the end, but it's more like the beginning of something beautiful, and for us to be able to have the support of NOFA doing all the nitty gritty inside outs that we don't have experience on has been like really a perfect match, I think, for both sides.
And I also like within the descriptions of these workshops that there's going to be, you know, plenty of opportunity to hear some origin stories or more storytelling aspects. You know, each session seems that it's going to have just a very human entry that's not in the way that I think about it. It's not kind of like sterile learning environment. You know, there'll be storytelling and
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think like a lot of it is about talking about decolonizing and like really like, you know, challenging sometimes what we have learned about these folks, and to be able to meet them and know they exist and that they're doing, they are as ordinary as we are also, but they're also extraordinary, and they have like you know, a lot of resilience and a lot of uh, history of success, even though the environment has been sterile.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, thank you for that roundup. That was really, really appreciate it, and it's very exciting. I'm already been happy to work with the PPLT that, you know, just thus far. Like for me, it's been a great experience just to meet folks already and get to know them and meet Chief George Spring, and uh, I'm looking forward to more, and I'm looking forward to a continued relationship.
Yeah, yeah,
And hopefully, you know, we can weave this into conferences going forward. Maybe it's a track, maybe it's, you know, a workshop here and there. So hopefully we can, you know, lift up the voices and lift up the presence uh, of the participants that are coming to this conference, and in general of the region, that, as you mentioned earlier, and something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, which is, you know, just for many folks that um, learned history of the United States, etc., Native American populations were in the books. And I think there's a a dawning upon our mind that we can allow in that these people are living amongst us right now, and they are to be listened to and heard, and be a part of these conversations. They're not coming out of books. They're not part of the past. It's not something that's part of history, and that's all. There's now a living, breathing
yeah,
history for us to create and integrate that I think a lot of people are ready to hear and ready to realize.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is the time for a lot of folks to come in and really merge two viewpoints of history. Sometimes they're, like I don't know, I'm a parent, so it's always two or three sides of the story. So it's just, seeing stuff from other people's eyes is so helpful. And yeah, the part of learning that I hope we can have is the part of learning of listening with respect and then asking curious questions. I think that's the best way to learn, to have that container in that space where we all can be who we are and not be ashamed of. So I think that's where we're coming from, and it's going to be a lot of that space. So stay tuned, register to the conference, and I hope you enjoy this short talks about what is to come.
Thank you, Ulum. That's fantastic.